Good morning, everybody. We're going to start by singing We Are Waiting for You, number 20 from your sing book, which you can find under your seats. There's rhythm instruments in the back, finger labyrinths over there. Get them anytime during the service. Please rise as you are able in body or in heart, and let us sing together. Be seated. So this month is Contemplative Spirituality, which is one of our 4 voices. So that's what we're going to be leaning into today and next week. But before we begin, we want to give a thanks to Kevin for filling in for Marshall. Marshall says he's feeling okay, but he was in an auto accident. And because of some health concerns, they're keeping him in the hospital under observation. It's got to do with medicines and how it affects his health, and the blood clot he had in his lungs a while back, and just wanting to make sure that all is well. But he's been texting me in the choir, so he says he's doing all right. But he just wasn't able to make it this week, but he's planning on coming next week. So send out some prayers for him for healing, health, and comfort, and prayers of thanks for Kevin for being here with us today. Our bulletin is online, whether it's on the app or the website. You can get it either place. After the church, we not only have fellowship, But we have church safety training, so you can stay for that. And please do. We've got lots of events coming up. I'm not going to list them all, but please check out the website, the Facebook page, and all the other places that we put out those things on our socials, because we want you to come to as many of the extra services and events as you want to. And the best way to do that is for you to know when they are. So lots of stuff coming up as we move into our Advent season. And so now let's bring ourselves fully to this time and to this place. Over the course of the week, I'm sure there have been times when you have felt not your own. As we think about contemplative spirituality, one of the things that comes to my mind is expanding our sense of self, not just for the purpose of doing it, but to be better engaged with the world, to be more in relationship with our holy love. So this morning, I want to ask you to think about those times this week where you felt like your body autonomy was interrupted. Sometimes it happens when someone is walking on the sidewalk or in a store and they have no sense of where you are in relationship to them, and they just simply barrel through, walking way too close to you, and you feel interrupted. Those are things that happen to me. What happens to you with your body when you feel like your body autonomy has been interrupted? And as you think about those times, take a breath and be in your body now. Take back your sense of self. Gather together all of those molecules that got scattered over the course of the week and be present in your body. During the course of the week, did somebody kind of railroad your intellect? You were in the middle of thinking, and somebody interrupted you, or you took too long of a pause to think of what you would say next, and somebody burst in to tell you what they thought or the rest of your sentence, and you felt like your intellectual autonomy was interrupted. In what way does your mind get disrupted? And has it this week? Take a deep breath. Collect all the molecules of your thoughts and of the way your brain works. And bring yourself fully in your mind, as best as you can, to this moment. Emotionally, this happens to us too, where we are on an emotional path and then we get railroaded. It can happen any number of ways. You can think about the ways that it happens for you. How this week can you gather your emotional molecules together to be in this place as we co-create this sacred space together? How can you be emotionally whole again? Or at least begin to put those emotional pieces back intact? This happens spiritually as well. People tell us how we should believe, what we should believe, when we should do this and that, and what God thinks of us. And maybe just as you were getting settled into what you understood your relationship to God was, you got railroaded by somebody else's theology. Not just challenged to think differently, but actually told that what you were thinking is wrong. Breathe into your own spirit. Breathe into your own relationship with the divine. Let go of all of that railroading. Gather together your spiritual molecules. Don't worry about what others have decided about you. You get to be and to do and to live the way that you know you need to. So breathe into the fullness of yourself as we co-create this time together, creating this sacred moment.
Please join me in our call to worship. Living and loving God, help us find your essence today.
We seek you for what we see, for what we hear, and for what we feel.
Find us where we are, O God.
Open our hearts to what is beautiful and hopeful.
Today we choose to embrace all the good that is around us.
With gratitude, our souls are nourished and flourish.
Now let us sing together, Colorful Creator. It's number 30 from the New Century Hymnal, which you can find under your seat. And please stand as you are able in body or in heart.
Colorful creator, God of mystery, thank you for the harvest, teaching us to see glimpses of the meaning of the commonplace, visions of the holy in each human face. One more.
Our biblical witness today is from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 12, verses 1 to 12. Then Jesus began to speak to them in parables. A man planted a vineyard, put a fence around it, dug a pit for the winepress, and built a watchtower. Then he leased it to the tenants and went to another country. When the season came, he sent a slave to the tenants to collect from them his share of the produce of the vineyard. But they seized him and beat him and sent him away empty-handed. And again he sent another slave to them. This one they beat over the head and insulted. Then he sent another, and that one they killed. And so it was with many others. Some they beat, and others they killed. He still had one other, a beloved son. Finally, he sent him to them, saying, "They will respect my son." But those tenants said to one another, "This is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours." So they seized him, killed him, and threw him out of the vineyard. What then will the owner of the vineyard do? He will come and destroy the tenants and give the vineyard to others. Have you not read this scripture? The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. This was the Lord's doing, and it is amazing in our eyes. When they realized that he had told them this parable against them, they went to arrest him. But they feared the crowd, so they left him and went away.
Our contemporary witness is from a book called Parables as Subversive Speech. It's written by William R. Herzog II. I'm reading an excerpt from pages 98 and 99. This is a book that we're reading in book study, and it's really fascinating. It's a little thick. It's dense in its content, but it's fascinating. So this is what he has to say, at least initially, about this parable. The parable of the wicked tenants poses unusually difficult problems for anyone attempting to reconstruct a version of the parable that might have preceded the Gospels. To a greater extent than usual, Matthew changes both the details and the meaning of the Markan source. Luke 20:9 through 19 introduces another set of complicating factors. In places, Luke agrees with Matthew against Mark. In other places, Luke agrees with Mark against Matthew. And yet, in others, Luke appears to go his own way. The agreements between Luke and Matthew led A.T. Cadeau, among others, to speculate that the parable belonged to Q. And because Luke usually provides a more faithful rendering of Q than Matthew, to suggest that the Lucan version was more reliable than Mark's. Did any of that make any sense to anybody? No, right? But what I think is fascinating about it is how the commentator is lifting up all of these disagreements. So our theme for this month, at least until Advent, which begins November 27th, Advent begins November 27th, coming right up, is contemplative spirituality. When we think about contemplation and spirituality, we might think about various kinds of spiritual meditation. Our imaginings might go to scenic views, to ritual tables, to praying. And I love all of those things. I would never dismiss any of those. But rarely have I had a conversation with someone about contemplative spirituality when we talked about analyzing a theological teaching. But what is contemplation if it doesn't also engage our minds? Our contemporary witness, which is this commentary about the parable that we read, might fit more neatly into our progressive theology voice. However, as we've been reading this book in our Wednesday night book study, I've been moved toward spiritual contemplation. Now, no doubt, this at least has something to do with the fact that this is our theme, and so I've been meditating on spiritual contemplation anyway. But I never felt like, while reading this book, I had to let go of the one to do the other. It's really worked surprisingly well for me. How does what the teachings might mean shift my understanding of the people whose faith path I follow? How does understanding their context help me to apply the teachings and the faith-based underpinnings in my own context? This is a kind of spiritual contemplation. When I contemplate these nuances, I start to wonder how these teachings shape my understanding of God's nature, my relationship to God, my desire and hope for the church as a community of faith. This is where progressive theology and contemplative spirituality dance together. It's why they're both important to us. In the commentary we read from the book this morning, the theologian William Herzog is comparing and contrasting the ways each of the gospel writers treat the parable being discussed. And the fact that we can't contain, without looking at it and go, now he talked about the Markan source and the Lucan source and the Matthean source, and we don't have it spread out. The point is that he's comparing and he's contrasting how they're similar, how they're different, and where they might have gotten these ideas from. The parable is generally called the parable of the wicked tenants. Now, that alone, if I just said to you, I'm now going to read to you the parable of the wicked tenants, where does your mind go? You're preparing for bad people, right? So that subtitle gives you a clue of the direction that I want you to think. Now, what we forget is that these subtitles in the Bible weren't written by the writers of the story. They were added later by translators to help guide us, to separate it, to make it a little bit more readable. And so a lot of times what these subtitles do is they break up the section and we read from here to here until the next subtitle, but we forget about the context of what was going on before that. So they can be helpful, but they can also drive our understanding of what's going on. Now, that title is one that Herzog even uses. It directs our point of view. But as Herzog explains, each gospel writer tells a story. Which one agrees, which one disagrees, who added a section, and whether the theoretical Q document was involved. I know we don't talk about the Q document very much. You can look that up later. We can talk about it if you want. We might not consider this kind of thought as contemplative spirituality. However, just as our emotions move our bodies and our minds move our emotions, our contemplations about the teachings move our spirits. The edges around the subjects of progressive theology and contemplative spirituality aren't always as distinct as one might imagine them to be. Well, one of my favorite images that I think about in times like this is when you put an ice cube in a glass. Let's say the ice cube is made of water and the glass of liquid you put it in is water as well. So it's all the same substance. There's that spot right around the ice cube where there's melting happening. And the distinction between the ice cube and that glass of water isn't super clear. And what's going on there? That's how I think about these moments where there's this interaction between progressive theology and contemplative spirituality. It's that sweet spot where the ice is just melting, and it's not quite ice, it's not liquid, right? One informs the other, and both together help us to expand our faith. When we intentionally allow one to influence the other, we're not only integrating our faith experience, but we're also integrating our minds with our bodies, our spirits, our emotions. We're becoming whole. How we understand the meanings of the teachings changes our perspective of faith, and it changes our spirituality. When this happens, it changes how we live in the world, what we think is important, what we prioritize, who we listen to and believe. How many of those voices get into our head and take away our autonomy, or what kind of, I'm not even going to say shields we have up, just, I don't know, the Rain-X that's on the windshield and it just kind of sloughs off, you know? It changes how we pray. It changes maybe even what we call prayer. Contemplative spirituality is more than having an ethereal experience or creating and maintaining a ritual practice. How we think and the words that we choose when we're talking about our spirituality is a part of it. The focus that we choose to have in a day can be an integral part of a contemplative practice. How we understand the tellings in the Bible should change our spiritual landscape, which in turn will shift our day-to-day life. So, what about this particular parable? There are tenants who are tending the vineyard that was created by someone. When it came time to collect the rent, so to speak, the tenants refuse. This is why they're called wicked. If the one who created the vineyard is the character of God, if the servants sent to collect the rent are the prophets, if the Son is meant to be the character of Jesus, then indeed the tenants, who are just us mere humans, are wicked. If read this way, Jesus is calling us wicked and we better behave. Looking a little deeper into the context, leading up to Jesus telling this parable, it says that Jesus was walking in the temple, and the chief priests and the scribes and the elders came up to him, and they said, "By what authority are you doing these things? Who gave you permission?" Basically is what they said. They had a little back and forth. And then Jesus tells this parable. The ending of the telling states that the religious leaders realize, "Oh, this is about us. He's insulting us." And they got really ticked off. In that case, perhaps the tenants were the religious leaders who were supposed to be tending the vineyard of God. In this scenario, the vineyard, well, we're the vineyard. That changes the focus quite a bit. Now it's the religious leaders who are being warned, not the people, not the vineyard. All right, so what if we look at the story a little differently? Let's say that the person who decided to build the vineyard was the religious leaders and not God. The person who symbolizes the religious leaders didn't own the land originally, but appropriated the land from their rightful owners because they had the wealth and the power to do so. According to the Old Testament, the land was given to each tribe of Israel in a covenant with that tribe, and it was always supposed to remain with them. But that's not how things were going in Jesus' time. Rightful landowners were being pushed from their lands and then often made to work on them for less than subsistence wage. The tenants in this scenario are the rightful landowners who have become forced labor. They revolt against their oppressors, and the end result is not a happy one. The violent revolt of the people ends in their destruction. But the point is that their destruction comes at the hands of the religious leaders who are supposed to be their mentors and their guides, who are supposed to be the ones that lead them to God and protect them. Interpreting the parable like this makes them out to be the oppressors and the murderers. Which is the right interpretation? Okay, there's no answer to that, right? So, maybe a better question. What other interpretations would you come up with? If we were all sitting in a circle, I would invite you to share. But I'll invite you just to think about it. What interpretations can you come up with? Who's the character of the owner of the vineyard? What is the vineyard? Who are the tenants? Why is this happening? With each of these different interpretations, how does it shift or influence you spiritually? Because it's not just something that stays in your head. It's supposed to move through your whole faith system. So, I have my own interpretation. And it's absolutely right. There's no doubt about it. It's the clear winner. As I've meditated on the possibilities, I've thought about the current concerns of Christianity and how so many people have rejected the church. Told that they're loved, but their sin is an abomination. There's a phrase for that, right? Love the sinner and hate the sin. So being told that, they're instructed that in order to be a part of the fellowship, they have to demonstrate obedience, even if it means hating themselves. This is religious oppression couched in a moralistic veneer of righteousness, but really, it's just for the sake of preserving the power structure and the status quo. At some point, the dam breaks and people have enough. No more, say the people. The violence in the story becomes the hate that people have for this kind of Christianity, which excludes, humiliates, and threatens with eternal torment. Honestly, why would anybody embrace such demands? Why wouldn't there be a revolt? What do these parables and teachings mean? As we turn them at different angles, allowing the light to shine through them, through the various facets that they have, we find that they can have very different meanings. Using not only progressive theology to think through these things, but also contemplating them as a spiritual practice moves us to understand the divine in new ways. It shifts and shapes our own spiritual landscape. Our prayers deepen. What we call prayer might change. If our spiritual contemplation doesn't engage our minds as well as the other aspects of our being, we end up in a closed loop. But when we engage our mind with our spirit, our practice becomes a spiral which ever widens and expands. And with that, my friends, peace.
Release my heart from clouds.
us join our hearts in prayer. Divine Beloved, we listen for that still small voice. We listen for it with our spirit, to be guided by your love and your grace. We listen for it emotionally. We listen for it in our bodies. And we listen for it in our minds. I don't know how many other dimensions you've created us to have, holy love. But in what other dimensions we do have that we don't have names for, we listen for it there as well. And we know that others are listening too. And they might be understanding you in different ways, in different names, with different languages, different perspectives. But when they are led by love and grace and mercy and kindness and compassion, and all the fruits of your Spirit are developed because of how they follow you, we embrace them. Help us to be a people that when others join us, they know that their path is celebrated by us. Help us to intermingle our ideas and our hearts and our spirits so that the diversity that we have brings a unity, a cohesion of purpose. Holy love, there's a lot of people out there a lot of people in here too have been hurt by the church, who have been told how they should understand the stories, how they should understand the experience of Christ, how they should understand whatever is bigger, this great mystery that we follow. And it doesn't jive with the truth that they hold within their personhood. And we send out healing to them, hope, comfort, and strength to forge their path of mercy and grace and love. And we also pray that as this develops, as the wave of people being able to find you swells up, that there would be accomplishments in our world toward developing paradigms where people can breathe into who they are without fear of laws that infringe on them or oppressors that want to control. We are grateful that we have found you and the path that we are on, and we invite whoever would come to share their perspective as we travel on this path together for the purpose of freeing the captives, feeding the hungry, and all manner of human and earthly needs being met. Because we have chosen to do that as a people, in covenant together, one with another, let us lift up our voices in these words of prayer, saying, Divine Beloved, you are everywhere and in each of us. Your many names are sacred, and we honor them. We call forth your beloved community to share here on earth the way we imagine it is in heaven. Provide for all of creation our basic needs. Reconcile us to yourself. Give us the courage and humility to be reconciled with each other. Strengthen us to withstand the pressures of selfish living. Guard us from evils that might overtake us, so that we can build your community in your love and in your radiance, which is everlasting. Amen.
Each week, we collect two offerings. One is for the church, which goes into our general fund for the running of the church and our ministries. The second is a loose offering, which is sent to a designated charity, which changes each week. If you've brought your offering in person today, you are welcome to drop it in the offering box in the back. It is the glass church near the doors to the narthex. Our loose offering for today goes to United Campus Ministry, which is an ecumenical partnership of the Presbyterian Church USA, the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, and the United Church of Christ. Since 1968, they've served students, staff, and faculty of multiple college and university campuses in the Houston area. The purpose of their ministry is to offer a deep-rooted, authentic faith that reflects the truth that each person is a beloved child of God. It is an environment open to questions about God and faith, which lead to answers unique to each seeker. They are proud to be a fully open and inclusive ministry. If you would like to give to our general fund, to the loose offering, or to both, you can use bill pay from your bank, send us a check, use the Plymouth app, or use PushPay according to the directions on your screen. As always, thank you for supporting Plymouth and the ministries of the loose offering. Please join me in our responsive offertory prayer. These gifts are a small measure of our abundance of care.
With thankful hearts we give what we have.
Loving God, take these gifts of time, talent, and treasure.
Help us use them to create a community and deepen our faith.
To widen our table and increase our generosity.
Acting in holy love in all we do and say. Amen.
Let us sing together now, "We Cannot Own the Sunlit Sky," which is number 563 from the New Century Hymnal, which you can find under your seats.
extra shake on the end. Now it's time to go from this moment to whatever it is you have next. I hope that you can stay for the safety training at the end. We've got some goodies over there. Take some time to fellowship. We've got some PowerPoints that we have to set up. I don't know what else we have to do, but it'll take a moment. So stay and let's be a part of that together. But whatever it is you have next, let's take a deep breath. Know who we are. Know that we belong here. Know that we think good stuff. God has given us all these thoughts to have, and we do our best with them. So go forth knowing that you are guided, you are led, but also you are gifted and you are skilled because you have been given what you need. So go forth, my friends, in peace and as peacemakers.